and g'day, welcome from down under. My name is Ozzy Stern, a country Victorian gamer of Star Wars Legions, Star Wars Armada and a number of other games here down in Australia. Today's videos are going to be from a recent Star Wars Armada match that I have had with a friend called Chris at my local gaming group called Badger. Now, the premise of this match is a ongoing part of our campaign that we are running. Chris has written up a document of a variant of Rebellion of the Rim campaign, which is called Sector Command. In it, the first couple of rounds we've already played, and I have posted some photos of it, of our first round battle, which covered having myself as the rebels conducting a convoy raid, being able to take out my Mel's Miniatures bulk cruiser and also a light freighter. I was also able to destroy his reinforcements of an ISD. In the next round, round 2, which I unfortunately didn't have any photos of, I did what was called a Hope mission and went to one of the planets with my entire fleet while his fleets were trying to track down my rebel fleet and rebel bases. Unfortunately, he found one of my rebel bases and destroyed it, but I was able to capture one of his planets that happened to have a shipyard. Now, in these rules, the only way a player can build a medium or a large, or even a massive, I guess we haven't discussed that, is to actually have a shipyard in the sector. And in this sector there are only 2 shipyards, so being able to capture one of them significantly reduced his ability to build ships, especially in very early terms of the game. Now, turn 4, I knew that he was going to have to try and subjugate that planet before I could accumulate enough points to purchase more ships. Now, I could build like hammerheads and Corellian corvettes and all small stuff, flotillas, GR-75s, MC-30Cs, all of that, but to get the more powerful ships, I needed to either capture a shipyard and hold on to it for 2 turns, 3 if I wanted to build a Moncal cruiser of any type, or I could send agents to his shipyard and try and capture a Star Destroyer or something as it's being built. The only problem with that, of course, is that that Star Destroyer will not be able to be given any upgrades. That captured ship won't be able to have any other than crew, any bonuses, and it will come into the battle, or it'll come into our campaign already scarred. So for me to actually therefore get it unscarred, it has to go into reserves to be repaired over time, or sent to another shipyard to be repaired. And seeing there's only 2 shipyards, that makes it quite difficult. So turn 4, I already knew that he was going to be sending a force, so I decided to set up a fleet ambush mission. This is my fleet of a Z2 Z95s, 3 Y-Wings, 2 X-Wings, and Hera in the Ghost. I also have a GR-75 medium transport with CommsNet. I also have a Hammerhead Scout Corvette with no upgrades. A Nebula B escort frigate with both the Task Force Commander, Master Coordinator and Fighter Coordinator, and MC-80 with Mon Kraken, Gunnery Team and Commander Sato as my commander. Opposing me, I have 4 TIE Interceptors, 1 TIE Bomber, 1 Victory class Star Destroyer, and 1 Imperial class Star Destroyer. My opponent has not got any upgrades on either of his Imperial class Star Destroyer or his Victory class Star Destroyer. So into the battle we deployed. He chose, with the options of only being able to deploy his ISD or the Victory, he chose to deploy the Victory on the station in the middle of the board, facing off to the right hand side of the table. Myself, seeing basically I got to deploy almost everything else, seeing he had to hold the ISD in reserve, I deployed along his line with the idea of having the Nebula B and my light attack craft like the Hammerhead Scout Frigate, Scout Corvette, hopefully engaging his rear arcs, which were going to be a lot less dice intensive, while he concentrated on trying to protect his side from my MC-80. We then played through the first round, and just before we started the battle, he rolls full reserve. He actually got his reserve roll off, which meant his ISD immediately arrived prior to first turn. That was a little bit of a shock for me, and it really changed the narrative of what I was going to be able to do. Then he had to roll as to where it would deploy from. Now he had to roll a blue dice for that. If he rolled a hit, it would arrive on one of the 2 3-inch sides of the table, his choice. If he rolled an accuracy, he could choose where it deploys from anywhere, any table side. However, if he rolled a crit, I can choose the facing of the location of where it was going to deploy, as well as the facing within limits. I can't sort of face it so that he immediately on turn 1 just goes off the board sort of thing. That would be ridiculous. So instead, he rolled and got a crit. Great. I was then able to deploy it on the very far right hand side of the table, running along that edge. It would mean, seeing he arrives at speed 1 and without any command dials activated yet, it would mean that it would take around about 2 to 3 turns before he even gets close to being in any type of firing range. So my plan was to get through, take out that Victory Star Destroyer as quickly as possible, and decide there and then what would occur. So now I'll show you the first video clip that I will insert into this video of the deployment. He deployed his Victory class Star Destroyer plus 2 interceptors in the center of the table. He also rolled for reserves and I was able to deploy his Imperial up the corner. We're playing a fleet ambush where I am the ambusher. So now round 1 pretty much occurred. There was more so movement than anything else. We didn't get anything into range. He did move his fighters a little bit off to the right hand side to a nearby asteroid field, and his Victory started moving away slowly, trying to meet up with his ISD, but of course his speed was still quite low at the time. The second turn, I felt I need to push, and using the fighter coordination, with the Nebula B to continuously move my fighters forward, seeing they were speed 3, but then also using the likes of squadron commands from my Hammerhead Corvette and also from the Melon Cow, I was able to, by the end of turn 2, get a fighter close. Not quite close enough to get into that range 1 band. It was just outside of it. So I was able to make some very long range shots with the Hammerhead and the MC-80, but not enough to cause too much damage. I only was able to strip some shields from the rear. End of round 1, we just moved. He moved his ISD off the board edge. No damage so far either side. End of round 2, he took out my Z95s in a counter attack after I took out both of his TIE interceptors. 1 damage on the MC-80 at this stage from a rat asteroid. Turn 3 arrived and he was able to move his fighters into combat with my Z95 headhunters. He caused 2 damage to each, so luckily they survived for that round. I was really thinking that if he wiped out the Z95s, he could theoretically try and start piecemealing off my GR75 or swing around to attack some of the Y-wings that were getting close to attack position. So I had to reposition the X-wings and also the VCX to protect my fighter flank sort of thing. I was lucky enough that my Nebula B moved close enough to push my X-wings and Y-wing even closer to that Victory class Star Destroyer. Obviously he moved it as his first activation and got it away from my nearest fighters, but not far enough before my Hammerhead and my Nebula B was able to move my fighters closer, and then my GR75 was throwing out firepower tokens to the MC-80, as well as I was able to also have my Hammerhead Corvette with a token, firepower token from previous round as well. So I was able to use the Nebula B with a token and a squadron command dial to push squadrons forward even beyond what they would normally be able to do. And I was able to get into range to start transferring some of those red dice attacks into black dice attacks. By this time I was also in blue range with my MC80, and as you can see with the subsequent turns, also very close range with the Hammerhead Corvette. End of round 3, I managed to move everything into range and take out his Victory class Star Destroyer, with the idea of taking out at least one of his Star Destroyers. I then successfully decided to exit the battlefield by discarding all of my command dials and going to speed 1. Seeing his ISD was well out of range, I had some damage on some of my ships already, namely the MC80 and the Hammerhead, and I felt it best to escape before that ISD gets into range. All my ships were unscarred because they were less than half damage taken, and the 2 Z95s I rolled to see whether or not I could recover their pilots, and I was successful in recovering the pilots, and therefore I'll be able to, in subsequent turns, deploy more Z95 headhunters rather than spending the cost. So all up, he lost around about 94 points, I believe, while I only lost 14 for my 2 Z95s. Small victory, but a victory nonetheless. We then sped through another 4 rounds of just basically him building stuff, searching for stuff, me going on convoy raids that were unopposed, stealing supplies, etc. I was also able to spend some of my resources that I had collected to get a second Hammerhead, a MC30C, some spinal armaments for quite a lot of my ships, which would meant that those ships had to go into reserve while they were being upgraded, and then they could come out. On his side of things, unfortunately, he was able to build a Quasar, a Onager Star Destroyer. I sent agents to try and capture it, but unfortunately the agents were found. He then built a Quasar. Again, I sent agents to try and capture it. They were found. He built a number of Raiders and Gladiators, which unfortunately, seeing they're all smalls, meant that he can basically build it and have it deployed in the following turn. And he was able to do a few smaller upgrades, getting reserve hangar deck for most of his squadrons, for his Star Destroyers, allowing him now to recover more of his fighters in some ways, being able to deploy them, having them lost to me, and then coming back with only 2, seeing quite a lot of his fighters with the swarm tactics. So before the end of the night, we ended up getting to a point where we are going to have another battle, and that will be the subject to my next set of videos. This time the battle is occurring over near a commerce hub, where I'm attempting to steal, raid one of his convoys with just my MC80 and a GR75 with comms. However, he's ambushing it with one of his task force, which includes quite a few number of fast raiders, gladiators, and ISD. But I do have a reinforcement of an MC30 nearby that will jump in with some squadrons to hopefully help. And that's Battle 1. Battle 2 is a Raise Hope mission for me, which we are playing the blockade run scenario to attempt to increase the likelihood of that second shipyard to start supporting the rebels. If I can capture both shipyards and keep them successful, that stops him from building any large or medium. So the other planet with the shipyard, I've got currently around about 7 hope tokens, so it's in open rebellion, and he needs to get it below 4 before it comes back under Imperial control. The planet that I'm currently about to attack has already got 1 hope token because I was successful in putting my ambassador, who is political influence, to increase hope or receive donations from supporters, etc. But I was able to increase hope on that planet. And then with this task force that hopefully I can get through, it will increase it by a further 4 hope tokens, putting that into open rebellion as well. But all in all, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, please subscribe. Please leave a comment if you think that the video has worked. If it hasn't worked, what can I do to improve it? Also, what sort of systems can I use to actually make it clearer? Like I have said, this is the first time that I am using this technology to video and document my games. I know that there are a number of YouTubers out there that have done games and they've done it professionally. How do they do it? Do they use a camera? Do they use an iPad? Do they have proper sound guys? What sort of editing programs do they use? If you know, or if you've got suggestions, like I said, please drop me a line, leave a comment below. But for now, that's it. From Aussie Stern, happy gaming.